but then later found out that AI was used to assist in creating said content, that they decided after finding that fact out that they liked that person less. I'm just going to call myself out as a keynote speaker. Why are you going to spend money on me if you can go into AI and learn? What am I going to bring that's different? I'm going to bring my humanity.
If your whole online persona is created by AI because you're being so efficient, right? And then in person you speak differently.
People who feel incongruent in the various places, which I think is one of the bigger dangers, even than just straight up using AI.
To have that thread in POV is so powerful. It's built over years. Let's say for the next few months, I didn't write my own content, like LinkedIn or anything on YouTube. And I just was reading a script, which, by the way, nothing turns me off more than a scripted video.
Original thinker. By definition, and maybe this is provocative and a little spicy to say, if you're pulling it from an LLM, guess what? Spoiler alert, it's not original.
Especially if you're young, like you just graduated college, and definitely be careful about leaning on AI too much, because this is the point in your life when you need to be forming your own opinions. I have a special guest today on the podcast, Henna Pryor, who is a friend of mine from ThinkersOne. And Henna is a keynote speaker and writer focusing on workplace performance. She also writes a popular column for Inc. magazine and is frequently tapped by top media like Forbes, NBC, Washington Post, Business.com, HuffPost, Fast Company, the list goes on. One of the posts that you put out on Instagram caught my eye. It was about that Pew Research study. So we're going to be talking about AI and content and personal brand today, and kick off by talking about the Pew Research study. Recap, what was the deal with people finding out later that content they had liked came from AI?
Yeah, the short version of the study is they did some digging across various types of communication and thought leadership. So they were looking into political candidates who gave speeches, or teachers, trainers, other types of people that were creating content, thought leaders, quote unquote, influencers that were putting out ideas. And what they found in short form was, even if people liked the content, if they liked the speech, they liked the post, they liked the idea, but then later found out that AI was used to assist in creating said content, that they decided after finding that fact out that they liked that person less. Right. I think this is a very significant finding in the world of people trying to put their own ideas and brand and IP out there into the world.
I thought it was so interesting that it was music, that there was a big age gap between, right? 53% of adults under 30 said they would like a song less if they found out it was written by AI, but only 26% of those over the age of 65. So the music thing, we were talking about this the other day, relates to creativity of any sort, writing, anything you're posting on social media, so creativity and ideas and something coming from a person.
What value do we place on creativity? What is it about creative endeavors that we as human beings actually value? So if people are hearing these things, and let's, in your case, it's not everyone that dislikes, but if a good chunk of people are saying, oh, if I knew that AI was the one who created this or did this, I now have different feelings. I think that's a corner of the discussion that we can't ignore.
I don't like AI generated music. I'm trying to keep an open mind about all this. Like, I'm not anti. I own an AI company. But I don't like the idea of it happening. There was with the music thing, I just saw this happen. There was a viral AI music video. My shoes forgot how to follow the ground. Tom Goodwin just posted this on LinkedIn. It's sort of like an old timey 30s female vocalist style, like really dreamy in Hollywood, and it went viral, and then apparently it's an AI band. And there was another one called Velvet Sundown, and they have 1.4 million Spotify plays. That's just wild to me. Like, who's making the money? Who gets paid?
Right. The whoever designed the app. I don't know. No, nobody in particular. And this is, I know when we were chatting this through casually, I think this is where music becomes especially interesting, because I can see, I'm not saying that I like it, but I can see the use case for background music or ambient music being AI generated. But I had told you the story of, this is not AI generated music in any way, shape, or form, but I had listened to songs by the Foo Fighters on the radio for years. And they were fine. They were not my most favorite band. I liked the music. It was catchy, but I didn't really think twice about it. And then I saw the Foo Fighters in concert. And my entire opinion of the Foo Fighters has changed. And so what does music mean to us? I think one of the things about, again, creative pursuits in general, but music in particular, is what meaning are we assigning? Are there cases where AI generated music that doesn't require as much meaning making has a home that we can all get on board with? And then for those moments that meaning is necessary, where the experience of it needs to be different, do we then decide to put it aside? I think these are really interesting explorations for which it's all very confusing and ambiguous right now.
Yeah. With the personal brand stuff, I guess it's ambiguous because sometimes you can tell if AI wrote it, sometimes you can't. Some people, like our friend MitchJoel, he said that he's gotten AI to the point where he can get it to sound just like him, which I haven't been able to do. And I would assume by now, like, it's an LLM. Why can't it read my website? I've got a website that's 15 years old.
Right.
But it doesn't sound like me whenever it writes anything. And then I feel dirty if I use it whenever I do. And I also feel like it's making me lazy.
Yeah, that plus one on all of that. Mine doesn't sound. My mine does not sound exactly like me. It kind of sounds like if I'm being honest, a try hard version of me, like trying to be cutesy and funny in the ways that I would incorporate humor strategically.
It's cheesy. It doesn't land. It's not funny. It misses the nuance.
Yeah,
I know what you mean.
And I think where it's interesting to me, and this is where I think some of it misses, is what feels personal in our day-to-day conversation. So actually, I think you might know him too. Mike Ganino once told me, he said, "Henna, you're the queen of the parenthetical aside, both in your writing and spoken." So even on stage, I'll land a point and I'll kind of like, "Do you believe that happened?" Like I like to throw a little throwaway comment in there, and I do it in both my writing and in my speaking. I can try to train AI on how to do that. But those things, when I do them because they come at me very organically. It's just like that thing that feels right to say, but it's not based on a pattern, and it's not based on logic, and it's not based on all these things that AI is anchoring to, its pattern recognition, its database. And so I think when people say, we hear it all the time, AI writing or AI produced music lacks soul, right? That's the phrase we like to use now. It lacks soul. I think what people mean by that is it lacks the throwaway or the in-between or those things that make us uniquely human. It's not a soul, but it's the stuff that is not pattern-based or logical.
Yes, it's not pattern-based. The parts of the conversation that become the most interesting are those asides or a spontaneous connection or association you could make between two disparate things, which I don't see it ever do that. And that to me touches on the POV, the opinion that we were talking about. And this is, I think, the crux of anybody that's wondering, especially if you're young, like you just graduated college and you've had AI the last couple years of college. Now you're in your professional role and you're starting to post online and build your personal brand. Definitely be careful about leaning on AI too much, because this is the point in your life when you need to be forming your own opinions.
Yes.
I'm so glad that I didn't have it all these years, because I found my voice. And even the last few years where I've used it to help me, I'm not losing it, but it's harder work to pull out that original thinking sometimes.
Yeah. It's funny. My first job out of college was actually in accounting. I worked for Ernst & Young. I was in audit, and there was an expression we learned in the world of accounting, which was garbage in, garbage out. So, your input is only as good as your output. In accounting, that was your financial statements, all it's going to be wrecked if the input is bad. To me, this is exactly what we're seeing with modern thought leadership. So, people who are hungry to have a point of view rather than becoming more well-read or trying to collect, their data points from disparate sources, right? My friend Rohit reads Teen Vogue. He's a 50-year-old Indian man, but he's trying to find different perspectives. Rather than doing that, they are going into AI saying, here's what most people say about this. Find me different perspectives or give me the surprising counterintuitive truth. That's still using what already exists in the conversation, and it's trying to find other things. Now, sometimes it will find some interesting things. Maybe you'll find a nugget that's worthy of additional exploration. But the reality is, I think we could all benefit when it comes to point of view from picking our head up a little bit and actually just consuming life from different sources, because that's where those really rich, unique point of views come from. The people who we look at and say, thought leader, original perspective. I guarantee that very few of their original perspectives are them going into an LLM saying, please find me a fresh perspective that hasn't been shared before. That's literally not how pattern recognition necessarily works.
People forget it doesn't think of anything new. It's mining everything that's already been said, written, published, quality, not important. And I'm not saying anything against Reddit, but Reddit's one of the main data sources, and anybody can post anything there, just like the rest of the internet.
Right.
So,
and it's not going to your point, it's using what's already there. So if you're trying to be, it's funny, like the term original thinker has the word original in it. Original thinker. By definition, and maybe this is provocative and a little spicy to say, if you're pulling it from an LLM, guess what? Spoiler alert. It's not original. It was there somewhere already. So like challenge yourself a little bit harder.
I think a lot of people forget that it's not thinking of anything new.
Right. We do forget.
Yeah.
Myself included, to be fair. This is, Emily, you're going to laugh at me because you're going to think, what does this have to do with anything? But I promise I'll bring this back to a point. My son, who's now 13, was getting ready to go to bed. And my husband and I were saying, Zane, it's past your bedtime, time to hit the sack. And he was like, what? What did you just say to me? And we're like, hit the sack? And he was on the floor in stitches. This is the funniest thing he's ever heard in his life, because no 13-year-old has apparently ever heard the expression hit the sack. And in his mind, those words mean something very different. What it reminded me of is, I do believe that modern day storytellers and people who have the art of noticing life, just noticing life. To me, what I took away from that was a funny moment, first and foremost, but also there was something in there that was really interesting observationally about language, about generational perspectives, about the way, we use turns of phrase without thinking. That is the stuff that actually creates the fodder that might become thought leadership, not what are funny things that teenagers say, ChatGPT. Like, we just need to be a little bit more present to all of that, I think.
I like all these old turns of phrase, and language always does evolve. We have English and slang and things that come and go. I've always thought that was really fascinating. But if we don't make it up ourselves, it will be frozen in time, essentially. Just like all the ideas get frozen in time. There's this thing called the dead internet theory. Some people think the internet's already kind of dead. Like the vast majority of the content there is not real or is slop. So then if everyone's relying on AI, even half the time to generate content, I mean, let's just say LinkedIn or YouTube ideas or even AI created music, then we don't come up with anything new. For better or worse, let's say that's what happens. Do people get off social media? Do they just become overwhelmed because it's like, this is slop?
I don't think so, but I think the people who are taking the slop route, there's eventually going to be a fatigue and things will eventually start to swing back in the other direction. So I think some people will get off social media. I think, we've seen that with Facebook. We've seen that with others where they just kind of give up on it altogether because they're not getting what they see. I think there are going to be subsets of people that will find their way of engaging with social media. So, learning how to more aggressively hide what they don't want to see, just trying to prioritize either platforms or places where they can add value. I think we're going to see a rise in those more community-based platforms like the Substacks and others where people can have a more curated, controlled version of what they want to see. I think it's idealistic to say people will just get off social media, but I think they will eventually, at different rates, become more attuned to and discerning of both people that are very obviously using AI and they won't have a lot of patience for that. And I know this is something you and I started to talk about, is people who feel incongruent in the various places, which I think is one of the bigger dangers, even than just straight up using AI.
Incongruent. Okay. So we know in body language and vocalics and tone of voice versus does it match the gestures and the words that are coming out of your mouth. And when somebody's lying or disingenuous, we on an animal level pick up on that so quickly.
Yep.
And that's what it means to have a bad vibe. a vibration,
Right.
which is energy. It's physics. We know like, oh, this isn't matching.
Something's off.
So if your whole online persona is created by AI because you're being so efficient, right? And then in person you speak differently, then it's incongruent, just like body language when there's incongruence, which means we don't trust that person.
But I hope I'm not speaking out of turn or calling anyone out. In the speaking and writing world, this is a really big thing right now. People can be incongruent through their writing, and that's where we're probably seeing it the most. And then when they need to speak on the same subject, their ability to be as articulate or as quick on their feet falls extremely short. So their expertise, when it's really well crafted and designed through an LLM, stands very differently than the in-person experience of that. So that's troubling on its own. But what we're also seeing, and so we can even move away from just written posts right now with the chat GPTs of the world, the other platforms, there's other ways we can sort of gamify our presence. And so we're seeing speakers who have really beautifully put together materials that give them the perception of a certain level of ability, and then the ability doesn't match. Same thing with writing. And so we're in this just very strange place right now where I think increasingly those who are savvy are placing value on what they deem as congruency. Somebody who can write a certain way, whose materials look a certain way, but then when we get on a call like this, or we're on a Zoom and an informal chat, represents themselves and sounds to them like the version that they saw. And I think that is going to actually carry an enormous premium as the months and years unfold.
Being able to think on your feet and have, like, I keep coming back to this idea of a point of view, a POV, an opinion, a thread throughout your body of work. And we are all allowed to change our mind. I think smart people do change their mind frequently.
All the time, yeah.
But just to have that thread and POV is so powerful. It's built over years. The thought of, let's say for the next few months, I didn't write my own content, like LinkedIn or anything on YouTube and my videos and my podcasts. And I just was reading a script, which, by the way, nothing turns me off more than a scripted video. Like when someone's reading the teleprompter. And there's so many apps out there that are, we can give you this app where you're reading from a script and nobody can tell. And Descript, which I love for editing and recording, has I'm like, my eyes aren't even looking properly at the camera right now because I'm kind of in Riverside. I'm looking at notes, but I think
I'm looking at you. I would like to look at the person I'm talking to. Yeah, I
know that. And I'm looking at you, but if I were to make this perfect, I would be looking right there. And Descript has a way to make sure that your eyes are up with AI to fix you from,
I don't
people know you're on a Zoom call. It's okay that you look at a note here, or if I hear a mouse click, like, it doesn't have to be this polished production of perfection. The whole thing about what makes something authentic and relatable is it is someone with a POV that I've seen them hold over time, and their body of work contributes to it. Call it thought leadership, call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then they're showing up and it's really them. On that note, I think we need watermarks. This is human created versus AI. We need that at some point.
Yeah.
I don't want to listen to, what is this wrong? Like, I don't want to hear this band called Culture Wars that Instagram keeps showing me. And I think it's real and it sounds like music that I would love. And then I'm like, wait, this is an AI band. And it freaks me out.
Yeah, it's grown too fast. I mean, I spoke at South by Southwest this past year, and this was a big topic of conversation around, AI ethics and the growth and the responsibility. Amy Webb talks about this a lot, about how do we catch up with the rate that this stuff is getting pumped out. And we're certainly not there yet. I think for the moment, the best we can do is those of us who, again, all of our jobs are slightly different, but those of us who are, again, trying to establish a brand, a thought leadership identity, something where our message, our belief, our core value system is part of the thing that we are trying to put out there in the world. I think all it takes is one. All it takes is one misstep of you blatantly using AI and leaving something in and posting it, or one time where it's very obvious because a limb is funny. Like, all it takes is one for people to go, AI queen over there. Like, people don't have the patience for it. They don't give you much forgiveness these days. So is it worth it? Is it?
Oh. Wasn't it Warren Buffett who said something like, a reputation takes 30 years to build and 2 minutes to destroy?
Something like that, yeah.
Also, AI hallucinates, as we know. It's not always correct. You should be double checking. And I will tell a somewhat embarrassing story of a time that the one time I did this, like what you're describing, and I said, I'm never doing this again, this was a couple years ago. And I was creating a prep doc for one of my clients who was having on a pretty famous guest who's actually a celebrity. He's a movie star. I wrote all the questions myself. And then this client who was hosting the podcast said, why don't we have AI generate some that maybe we haven't thought of? And it will scrape all of his information and like find hobbies that maybe we didn't know. So then it created this question that said something like, ask him about his vintage car collection. And so I put that in the prep doc, and then
he didn't have one.
We said, luckily we didn't end up, he caught it before the guest received the prep doc early. I would always send these out when I was doing podcast production. And he was like, love the questions. One thing, I don't have a vintage car collection that's not, I don't know what you're talking about. And
how bad would that have gone though? If you, I mean,
he was like very gracious. It would have been fine, but it was embarrassing because like I could have gone and double checked it, but I was like, oh, okay, we'll just use AI. And I'm sure, where would this come from?
Can I give you an opposite example of this? So, like many parents that have teenagers, our household watches Hot Ones because we like it and it's having a moment. And Sean Evans, I think, is the prime example of someone who is doing this right. I mean, these celebrities that he interviews, these musicians, they are accustomed to answering the same 12 to 20 questions, especially if they're working on a specific project. And what is the most fun is not just the rigor and interesting qualities of his questions. He goes deep. He finds the details that nobody's talking about. Not only that, though, they are so well done and so clearly done with effort that it's not even their answer to it that's interesting. It's their reaction to the question. We watched Kate McKinnon on Hot Ones yesterday, and she's like, okay, this is like spicy physically, but you're really like emotionally, these are getting me. And you just, the humanity of how deeply the quality of his research and questions affected her and her energy and the way she responded. There is no pattern analyzing machine that can do what he's doing right now, which is in no small part why his show's been so successful. The wings thing is cutesy. His questions are what has earned him the respect. And there's not an LLM on this planet, and I'll stake my ground on this, unless you prompted it to oblivion, which would take just as long as doing the damn research yourself, that could do what he's doing right now with the quality of his questions. And that, to me, is where people need to try to find some inspiration from there.
What this reminds me of, too, and I forgot to mention this at the beginning, Good Awkward, obviously, your book, your hashtag, your everything, right?
So my life.
I love it, though. Like when we first met, I thought, oh, Good Awkward. And it's just so juicy and it's so relatable and it's so helpful. And can you give a brief explanation of what that means? And then what I'm obviously going to draw this back to is if we're using AI, we'll never be awkward. We'll just be too perfect. And then there's no vulnerability.
Oh my gosh. So Good Awkward in its simplest definition is the emotion of awkwardness is not a weakness to fix or a deficiency to run away from, but actually leaning into it and leveraging it is your greatest opportunity for professional growth. When I say that, it can sound trite and it can sound cliche, but really there has been an entire body of underexplored research on the emotion of awkwardness that it was really fun to have an opportunity to dive into. And I think it's given people a lot of perspective on what this emotion actually represents. Now, to your point on AI, I think where that intersects with the work is there's a chapter I talk a lot about this idea of catering, which is we're essentially performing a version of us that we think other people are looking for or that they want to see. And I think there's no place that we see this more acutely than in the professional thought leadership spheres or the brand spheres. We're trying desperately to put forth this version of us that is attractive and palatable and smart and competent. And so we will lean on AI to try to create this version, this polished version. If you can use it to help you catch, glaring unnecessary typos, too many of them, you missed a word, I'm not mad at you. Go ahead, go for it. But if you're using it to strip away your own clunky thinking or like development of an idea, everyone can do that themselves. They don't need you. I think, I'm just going to call myself out as a keynote speaker. Why are you going to spend money on me if you can go into AI and learn? What am I going to bring that's different? I'm going to bring my humanity. I'm going to bring my storytellings, and I'm going to bring all the cracks and crevices that make the experience feel relatable, right? So I think we have a danger. I understand why we use it, but polishing away every smooth edge actually does not make you more likable. And there's plenty of research that supports that.
Speaking of LinkedIn, and you have a background in the recruiting space, did you see, I sent you that Instagram story from Miss Anti-Work, Gabrielle Judge.
I watched it.
And there was this job seeker, Cameron Mattis, he was at Stripe, I believe. So he put a prompt injection in his LinkedIn profile to reveal which recruiters were using AI. He was getting a bunch of recruiters reaching out and he's like, this seems like bots. He put a bit of code in the top of his LinkedIn bio. It instructed AI to include a flan recipe, like the flan.
Like the custard,
like
the Spanish custard.
Yeah, the custard, exactly. So then he would know because when these recruiters reached out, it would have the flan recipe in the message. And then she had a hot take where she's like, I'm not mad at AI bot recruiter messages because everyone in corporate America sounds like a bot already. And they're just making their job more efficient. They're saying what they would have said anyway because they all sound the same and they don't talk like human beings a lot of the time.
Yeah. So as a fellow, as a former 14-year executive search and staffing professional, here's how I'll respond. The only place where she's wrong is everybody sounds like a bot already.
True.
A lot of people in the industry sounded like a bot already. And then those of us who rose to the top, not to pat myself on the back, we took great efforts and lengths to not sound that way. So yes, if we are talking about the majority of the industry, again, I started in that industry in 2006. And back then, spray and pray was a phrase that we used in different contexts, smile and die. Like it was just, it wasn't AI, but it was like, what's the quick way to make a volume play to try to, cast the net wide? That's been around for eons. It's changed in what it looks like. I think every industry has people that will try to find the shortcuts instead of finding the unique or creative, differentiated version of it. This is just one more example of that. Do I believe that every recruiter is like that? Absolutely not. But I think people are trying to find their competitive edge, and sometimes they try to find it in the less human, lazy ways.
We're very concerned that we're being tricked. That's the theme with like all these little anecdotes that we've talked about. It's the idea of being tricked where you thought it was human, it turned out to be AI. So maybe the watermarks, I think are helpful. I also don't want to eat my words. I don't want to be that, why would I buy the automobile? My horse works just fine.
Right.
I feel like I sound that way sometimes when I talk about this.
I agree in that, yes, evolution is happening. AI is here. I don't think either of us are pretending we're trying to fight that. I do think it's fair to have conversations about the cost and the shadow side. So, we're not saying that cars shouldn't have come, but I'm sure at that time they were talking about the skills that were lost, from not getting on a horse, when it came to the internet or cell phones, what is the cost? And I think maybe today we are slightly more educated, having examples, especially of technologies in the past. We have technology examples that we can lean on of what are the shadow sides, what are the downsides, what are the costs. And
what advice would you give to somebody who's using AI? They have a personal brand, they want to create content. Is there a good way to use it where you're not going to run the risk of incongruence?
So my recommendation, and just to be very clear, I use ChatGPT, that's what I call it,
ChatGPT,
and other AIs all day, every day. I am not some resistant to AI human being. I use it for brainstorming. I use it to try to, I say, hey, give me a counter perspective. Why might I be wrong, right? I'm always using it to iterate and come up with things. But when it comes time to write a first draft of something, is it easier to do it in AI? Absolutely. I have AI well trained on my voice. Again, it's not perfect, but it can give me a good enough starting point. For a while, I used to do that. I no longer do that. I make myself write my own first draft because what I am realizing is the value in that exercise, cognitively, what it's making me do, the neurons that are firing, the stretch that it's forcing. You said at the very top of this, Emily, I feel like I'm becoming more lazy. When I was having it write my first draft, I call myself a writer, and I could feel myself getting more lazy with my creative thinking, my divergent thinking, my expressionism, like all these things were starting to suffer. And so now I just make myself write my first draft. Will I go back and forth a few times to maybe say if there's a better phrase or a way to make it more vivid or clean up the language or tighten for clarity? Of course, that's what the tools are there for. But at somewhere along the workflow, whatever it is you're doing, is there a part where you can, despite the easier path being available, choose the path of more resistance because you see the upside, where you see the value? Just pick a place on the path. Start there.
Did we leave anything out?
We all owe it to each other to bring better content forward. Whatever, world we live in, brand, personal identity, whatever it is, we owe it to each other to bring some reality back.
Especially if you're in a trust-based profession, yes, which was a term you used, and I love marketing, speaking, financial advice, anything that's a relationship-based or idea-based profession.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, I would love it if it wasn't.
PriorityGroup.com, or you can just go to HennaPryor.com.
It'll take you
Follow Henna on LinkedIn, Instagram, everywhere. She's the best. I will put links to Henna's profiles in the show notes. How can people go get your book, Good Awkward? Where do they
It's on
get the
Amazon,
book?
Barnes & Noble, okay, most indie bookstores. We just re-released some paperback. So hardcover, paperback, audiobook. Yeah, please.
Oh,
please
and of course, if you would like to book Henna or me to speak at your next event, whether it's virtual or live, we are on ThinkersOne.com, which is get your team thinking in 15 minutes or less. Live or recorded videos, thought leadership videos. So you're getting keynote level thinking customized for your specific team, challenge, group, business. It could be a drop into your Zoom call. It could be a recorded video about any topic. What I think is so cool about ThinkersOne is you don't have to have the hassle of negotiating a speaker fee, getting somebody on an airplane, making a big to-do, but you're getting the value of the ideas from that person for your team, like one-on-one. So it's not even just their regular keynote they give to everybody. It's specific to you, and it's co-created in the moment, which is so cool because he's the live, like the Zoom drop-ins. Shout out to our friend MitchJoel, who introduced us, and who he and Aubrey are the founders of ThinkersOne. We love ThinkersOne. ThinkersOne.com. If you guys have questions for me or Henna, leave them in the comments, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, and we'll get back to you.
This was fun. Thank you.
Okay.